Drake is back with a song called What Did I Miss? He revealed this on a live stream that I don't entirely understand how it worked. It was over the weekend. It was on his YouTube. Drake. Song is called What Did I Miss? It was released on July 4th, July 5th. I'm being told that is exactly a year after Kendrick Lamar released the Not Like Us music video. I'm going to tell you why this is really lame. I think this whole thing is very lame. I also want to be very clear on my stance on Drake. I was not a Drake hater. I was not skeptical of Drake as a kid. I loved Drake. I thought Drake was amazing. Before I even understood why he was amazing, I felt he was amazing. Marvin's Room was really the first song that I remember taking notice of Drake. He had pop songs on the radio, songs that I would deem radio songs that I don't think were that cool. Not in a bad way, but like they're not the type of songs that are going to resonate deeply with me. I remember driving to high school and hearing on Hot 97 his first single, Best I Ever Had. Very catchy song. Not a song that you're going to internalize, especially as a dude. He had cute other songs and I'm not, by the way, I'm being very clear here that, these, when I say cute, I'm not speaking down on these songs. They were just kind of cute, catchy songs. The Find Your Love song, he had songs with Wayne, of course. He was part of Young Money. But I remember when I heard Marvin's Room, it was so incredible to hear a song like that was a rap song, because I think Marvin's Room is very important historically in the world of rap music, because it's the first time that I can think of where a rapper doesn't get the girl at the end of the story. Hip hop, a largely narrative driven form of music. I think more so maybe a second to country music, very narrative driven or equal with country music. That was the first time that a rapper doesn't get the girl. He's the loser at the end of Marvin's Room. That song ends and he goes, oh, I guess I'm just going to kick it here then. That was very important. And yes, Kanye West, before Marvin's Room, does 808s and Heartbreak. Very important record. We're not going to talk about Kanye tonight. It's about Drake. I just think that is a song that was so relatable. And to see a rapper with flaws like that, and Kanye did start that. I think All Falls Down is another very important song historically in terms of showing flaws as a rapper in a relatable way. But yeah, Marvin's Room was huge. And then even just how that album sounded, Take Care. Nothing sounded like that. And a lot of people say, oh, Drake doesn't have a classic album. And then people go, well, maybe Take Care is a classic album. And even the haters will go, that might be a classic album, which I think is saying a lot. And it really defined Drake. And it built this universe of this Toronto artist. And this is what Toronto sounds like at nighttime, driving around. Drake has talked about this. He's really just crafted this world. And Drake rose to prominence by being so real and being relatable and vulnerable and overcoming obstacles. And I would say one of the biggest moments of Drake's career, and everyone would probably say this, is when Meek Mill went at Drake over the ghostwriting allegations, because Drake, always towed that line between a pop star and a rapper. And, maybe he took some of those sensibilities from the pop world into rap. Probably wasn't the first guy to work with writers. Certainly wasn't the first guy to work with writers. Drake himself has helped tons of people, including Kanye West, write his songs, sometimes entirely. And he worked with a guy named Quentin Miller, and it got blown out of proportion. And Drake didn't share the Meek album or didn't promote it to the extent that Meek liked it or something to that extent at the time. Meek felt away. He was seeing Nicki. I'm sure he felt a type of way about Drake's relationship with Nicki. I'm sure there was insecurities there. And then Meek gets word that, well, basically Meek didn't like his verse or something like that. And then he gets word, well, that's not even his verse. And somebody else wrote that. And so then Meek, in a very reactionary moment, starts this beef with Drake. Drake is prepared. Drake defeats Meek. And it is Drake's greatest triumph. Off the back of that, he releases Views Does a Million records in a week. Huge numbers in 2016. Probably the biggest opening week for an album other than Adele, 25, that decade. And he's on top of the world. And then he does More Life. Great playlist, he calls it, right? And then the next year is when he gets into the beef with Pusha T. And then Pusha T basically is like, you got a kid. And that's the first time we're like, ooh, Drake messed up. Because it wasn't even that he hid his child. He was such a strategic guy. And then here he was having a child unexpectedly. And out of respect to his son, we're not going to go on a whole thing about that. But what I'll say is, from a strategic standpoint, it was an unplanned thing in Drake's life. And so Drake was this like chess master who like he planned out everything, right? He talks about this in songs, right? Like, I'll tell you what comes next. It's from like 2022, 2023. But that was his whole thing, is he could predict what comes next. He was always in control. And then here was this incident that, of course, was a blessing in Drake's life. And he might say the biggest blessing in his life. And he wouldn't be wrong. But it was just unexpected. And it was this thing that Drake hadn't planned. And Drake had this brand where he planned everything. And he was always in control. And he's a mastermind. And then he starts making this music that's like more gangster leaning as that style of rap becomes more popular. And he goes from this guy who would self-admittedly talk about how he tried to sell drugs and like couldn't sell drugs. He had to give the drugs back. He couldn't do it. He tried scamming people on phones with his friends. Like, he didn't have the heart to do it. Right? Like, thank good. These are things he talks about on songs in his own catalog. That's how I know them. And so there is a long held story arc or life arc, right? It's a real life arc in rap music where you don't have means, you have a way with words, you have a talent, you have a skill, you have an entrepreneurial spirit, and through all of those things, you build a life where you go from illegitimate business to legitimate business, right? Drake then does the opposite, where he begins with legitimate business in his life in the world of child acting and commercials and things like that, legitimate business being legal business. And now he's telling these stories about how he's like really deeply entrenched in illegal business, which is weird to think about, because if you were in illegal business, like, you wouldn't want to talk about it to the extent that Drake is talking about it in these songs. And so whether or not it's legitimate or not is not my business. It's very hard to imagine a guy who was so successful because he was so broad appealing, where he could rap, but he could also get mainstream people that just thought he was charming, he was goofy, he was fun. And now he's toe tagging people, meaning murdering them. He's spinning blocks, like he's claiming he's murdering people in songs. Which, like, why would he do that? Why would you murder people? Why would you do that if you're Drake? And again, maybe he's doing it, maybe he's not. Maybe it's supposed to be a figure of speech, but it's not really being presented that way. It's kind of being presented as like, this is the life I live. He says on the song off of For All the Dogs, I wasn't really gangster till now. So now he's claiming to be gangster. You know what I mean? And he's talking really tough. And I just think that's where he starts to lose people. That's where he starts to grow skepticism from his peers. And I think it's also very important where, on this song, he talks about, like, what did I miss? You guys were right there. Like, I was doing all this stuff for you. Like, what did I miss? I think what Drake missed is that you can think you have a friendship with somebody for a reason, and it's actually a different reason. You can think, like, let's say in high school, you throw the best parties because your parents are never home and you have the biggest house. Okay. And these people start hanging around you and everybody wants to be your friend. And you're like, yeah, like, they like me. Like, I know the house is the house, but that's part of me. Like, the house is my family's house. My family's a part of my life. Like, I'm internalizing this house. And yeah, they might like the house, but that means they like me. And they call me and they text me and they shout me out in the hallways. And then something happens. Maybe you then start cracking jokes about somebody in the cool kids group. Maybe you, I don't know, get a little too comfortable in their estimation. And they start going, yo, is it really worth it to hang out for the big house? Is it really worth it? Like, yo, that's kind of corny what he did, right? Or, etc. And then finally someone just goes, yeah, I don't really care about the house anymore. I'm going to say this. And they say it. And then another person says it. And now you got the whole class against you. And you're like, yo, what the hell? You hung out at my house every weekend. You used my home. You threw parties there. I let you. What did I miss? And what you missed was it was never about you. It was about what you could do for people. It wasn't that, yes, they may have been gangster or maybe they had street cred and they liked you and you looked at it as a cosign. But really, what that probably was overwhelmingly rooted in was not mutual respect, but a shortcut to get a bag, a shortcut to get a paycheck. Wayne said it in 2009. We're going to be all right as long as we put Drake on every hook. People saw that. People heard that. People then experienced the truth of that statement. And if you wanted a hit, that's what you had to do. You had to get Drake on your hook. Doesn't mean you're a bad person either, but you get what I'm talking about. And I think that when Drake was walking around saying he's living this kind of life, I think it probably ruffled the feathers of people who may have been really legitimately living that kind of life. Now, he may be living that life. It's just you're going to have skepticism because that's not how the public or maybe even his peers got to know Drake. And look, maybe Drake went through that Pusha T beef in 2018, and he famously goes at Pusha and he goes, you may have sold drugs to college kids in the 80s, or no, excuse me. I'm going to paraphrase it. You may have sold drugs to college kids for Nikes and Mercedes, I think is how Drake puts it. But you guys act like you were Escobar in the 80s. Okay. So his contention there is with Pusha T overstating, right? You don't rap what you lived. You just rap what you heard. And he goes, don't be embarrassed. There's plenty of people who do what you do. Now, I wonder if Drake sees that and he's like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, literally, I just got beat by lies. It doesn't matter. Then F it. I'm going to do that. Because then maybe Drake goes, well, I have friends that I've seen do stuff. I'm going to start rapping about that. If that's the game we're playing, if that's the playing field of rap in 2018, 2019, then yeah, sure. Okay. If we're going to let these small level drug dealers talk like they were Pablo Escobar and that's chill, then guess what? I'm going to talk about X and I'm going to talk about Y and I'm going to talk like I'm Z. Maybe that's what happened. And so, anyways, the Kendrick thing comes out. I think Drake leaving Kendrick out of that first person shooter moment for whatever reason was an oversight. Obviously, in hindsight, being 2020, it provoked Kendrick. Future obviously had a beef with Drake over something. I mean, again, like these could be over women. It could be over a lot of things, man. And so the whole world turns on Drake. And Drake kind of goes away. And this is the problem with certain maneuvers when you are dealing with the media literate audience of 2025. What I mean by that is we didn't know how anything worked as kids. Tell me if you were like this. When I saw a celebrity on a talk show as a child, I thought they legitimately were like in the neighborhood. And they were like, oh, yeah, I'll stop by Jay Leno. I'm Mel Gibson, or I'm Bruce Willis, or I'm Tom Cruise. And I never thought that they were there promoting a movie. I thought that would just come up in conversation. Oh, yeah, and I got that movie out. That's what I thought as a child. Maybe you did too. Now it's very different. Now the fans know what a single is, what a rollout is, what streaming numbers represent. I mean, I didn't know what charts were or how they calculated them as a child, but now kids do. And so I think what the uphill battle that Drake is going to face is that he clearly went away. He was in Australia for the Super Bowl. He disappeared to a large extent. He was not very visible during that entire run of the past 12 months of Kendrick and by extension SZA. So now Luther's coming down the charts. It's losing steam. I got to imagine the Grand National Tour is either going to Australia or wrapping up. And so now Drake comes out with this song. And I think that's going to be received as weak by a lot of hip hop heads and by a lot of fans. They're like, bro, like, where was this energy 12 months ago? Where was this energy 6 months ago? To release a song now, it's like, well, probably a lot, man. You know what I mean? And look, Drake has to move on, right? Like, he's got to move past this. He's got to address this. God forbid he turns into 2020's Ja Rule, where poor Ja Rule had an amazing career of hits, and all anybody talks to Ja Rule about now is 50 Cent. Who, by the way, happy 50th birthday to 50 Cent. 50 Cent is 50 years old today. God forbid that happens to Drake with his beef, where it just defines him. That's all anybody wants to talk to him about. There's also the whole stake of it all with Drake, where he endorses gambling. Now you have to understand, Drake's whole thing was like his hero was Jay-Z, right? He says on a song off of Views, he goes, I used to want to be on Rockefeller. Now I turned into Jay. That was the archetype, is Jay, right? I got to imagine a little bit of the whole Rihanna thing with Drake was like finding his Beyonce. And he kind of was the new Jay-Z. He had his own liquor, Virginia Black. He had his own clothing line, OVO. It was like Rockefeller before it and like Ace of Spades and all this stuff that Jay had. I just think when you are endorsing gambling, which Jay-Z, for the record, like Jay-Z might have something going on with Fanatics because of Michael Rubin with their sports book. And Drake obviously heard people's criticisms of him gambling, which, I mean, gambling is almost always irresponsible. I love gambling. I'm not saying it's largely irresponsible. And he said, he recently went on his social media and he said something to the effect of like, oh, I give it away. You don't see me giving this money away to single mothers or the less fortunate, whatever. But then he'll also post his losses, which are enormous in the world of betting. And it's like, you could also just take those losses and donate them, right? Now, I'm not somebody who's going to tell someone how to spend their money. That's not what I'm getting at. But it's not great for a elevated brand. Drake used to have an elevated brand. Virginia Black, the whiskey he came out with, was like, it was a very luxurious idea of a liquor. The bottling was premium. It was gold. And that was Drake's whole thing. For a guy Drake's age, who is very influential, to be inspiring people of lesser means to gamble their money and make it look like you can make a lot of money, I think really is gross and is like, for a lot of people, I bet they feel like it's beneath Drake. I definitely think it's beneath Drake to take that loss in your sport and then to basically just the loudest thing that you're about in those 12 months is this gambling app or website or whatever stake is. And you're like the biggest artist in the world. It just feels weird because not everything's about money, especially in the world of branding. And Drake's brand was so well curated for so long. And now it's like, it's very confusing. So there's very questionable decisions along the way. I think stake and that whole presentation is at the top. I also think the name of this album, dude, politics are divisive. Politics are polarizing. Drake, of course, a Canadian artist. But to call your album ICEMAN, I get what you're going after. Like, what does he say on that old song? Got a lot of blood and it's cold. I get it. You're cold-blooded. I get it. Everyone's turned your back on you. You're the Iceman. You don't care anymore. I get it. I totally get it. Okay. But one of the most polarizing initiatives in the history of the United States is being conducted this year, and it's called ICE. Okay? Why call your album Iceman? I don't know. You could call it anything. You could literally call it anything. It's just, there's like, again, and it's not about like, look, I get that I think half of the United States is like really about ICE, half of it really against ICE. It just feels weird to call your album Iceman. I don't know. Maybe he feels like America turned their back on him and he's going to be the heel now. He's the bad guy. Maybe that's part of it. But I think everything I'm talking about, it's manifesting in reality. So like, give you two examples. One industry, one non-industry. An industry example of how all of these things that I'm talking about are catching up to Drake. Drake used to sneeze on a record and it would go number one. He could sneeze on 10 records. He'd have all the top 10 songs. He wrote a great song. Nokia is a great song. I love that song. Nokia. So catchy. Linked back up with the music video director that did Hotline Bling. Released it, I think, a similar time of year. Maybe a little bit earlier than Hotline in 2015. Didn't get to number one. Got to number two. Of course, that's great. Number 2 in the country, of course, that's great. It's everybody's dream. Everybody would take that, number 2. But Drake couldn't dethrone Luther. Couldn't do it. Couldn't get past Kendrick and SZA. That is a new ripple in the Drake narrative. He was automatic number 1. Now he can't be automatic number 1. Okay? It's a small regression, but it's a regression. That was the industry example of how these missteps, I'm calling them missteps, have manifested. A real world example is on his stream the other night. He's in Toronto, by what I gather. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's in Toronto driving around this ice truck called ICEMAN. This is his new persona. He's the Iceman. And remember, just for context, Kendrick Lamar just ran Toronto, twice? The Rogers Center? Again, an arena a ballpark that Drake has never run. I'm not saying he couldn't run it. He just hasn't ran it yet. And Kendrick beat him to it in his own town. Toronto didn't feel so loyal to Drake that they didn't fill a baseball stadium for his direct rival and didn't sing along to Not Like Us and didn't ask for an encore and didn't give the man who dissed their sixth god a standing ovation. But I saw this story on social media, went to the concert. Drake crucified that guy. That the guy had to apologize. Still went. Do you know what I mean? Like, still went, still felt emboldened enough to go, still felt like cool enough that, yeah, I can go. And I think that's the issue is people feel like they can disrespect Drake. And maybe they feel that way because of things like a steak sponsorship, or maybe they don't believe exactly what he's saying. Drake could very well be heading a criminal enterprise and very well could do every single thing that he's talking about on those songs. I'm not challenging that. What I'm doing is I'm just saying the perception is radically different, right? Like that is radically different than what we knew him to be for the majority of his public persona career and publicly known career. He's driving around his hometown and kids run up to him and they call him a B word. I think I can say it all right. He's on the radio. Somebody calls him a bitch on the stream. And granted, it's probably a punk kid just being a twerp, and Drake confronts him or whatever. And he's like, you come back here. And like, I guess the kid ran away, whatever. I'm not saying that kid's courageous. I'm not saying he's brave. I'm saying I've never seen a kid run up to 50 Cent in 2003 or 2005 in New York City and call him a bitch. I never saw somebody back in the day run up to Jay-Z outside of the 4040 Club, call him a bitch in New York, or furthermore, in Brooklyn. I'm just saying these are small transgressions. Nokia not going number 1. His city showing that much love to his direct rival. Local politicians going to the show. Kids in his own town feeling like they could do that. Feeling like they want to do that. So that all leads to this. This is the song that he released. Genius.com describes it as a reflective track where Drake confronts betrayal and shifting loyalties in the aftermath of 2024's rap feud. He questions how people he wants, kind of everything I told you about. The song premiered during a YouTube stream on July 4th, 2025, titled Iceman Episode 1, where Drake plays a worker on his lunch break watching old clips of himself in Toronto, followed by the music video. It was released on all DSPs the next day. Episode 1, you'd imagine this is going to be a serialized thing, an episodic thing. And I guess he's playing a character. He's playing a character in this stream. And then it leads to the music video for this song. Now, what stinks is I can't watch the music video with you guys because we'll get flagged. So what I can do is read you some of these lyrics. And I want you to remember what I said earlier, how Drake conquered. He overcame so many things along the way in his rap career. Doubt from the rap community that a kid from Degrassi could become a rapper. People thought his debut album wasn't going to do well. Then they thought, sophomore slump's coming. Then they thought he couldn't do island music. Then they thought he wasn't tough enough to take on Meek Mill. Then they thought when he went away after More Life, oh, he can't come back. He's old. He's toast. Came back with God's Plan, his biggest song. I just want you to remember that as we get into this. He was the guy who inspired you because he overcame. He conquered. So opens with the chorus. He goes, I don't give an F if you love me. I don't give an F if you like me. Nothing new. He's always said that. It's very Scorpio of him. Again, the young piss and vinegar young man. I'm out to prove the world wrong. I'm angry. I'm angsty. As the hero ages, as the story grows, you want to see growth. You want to see a different point of view. The protagonist at the end of the movie does not have the same point of view as the protagonist had at the beginning of the movie. He goes on to say, asking me, how did it feel? Can't say it didn't surprise me. Again, though, see, we thought he was the guy who was the chess master. He was the strategy master. Nothing could surprise Drake. And here he is going, it surprised me. The betrayal surprised me. Last time I looked to my right, you guys were standing beside me. How can some people I love hang around wussies who try me? See, I think when you're 25 and you're complaining about betrayal, it's relatable. It certainly was for me. Whether women you're dating or friends, right? But again, it's not an ageist thing. It's take the word age out of it, because I think then people think you're being rude to like older people, or just like, oh, you get, oh, what, like, what are they supposed to do? Just roll over and die? No, it's just about where you are in the story. So it's like early in the story, Drake had this issue with betrayal, but then he accumulated all these resources and he accumulated all of this money and success, and he conquered so much. I go back to that idea of conquering. That he should have put himself, theoretically, in a position to be around better people. Now he is of means. So why is he still dealing with these issues? All right, verse 1. I'm whipping around on like 600 acres. This is the thing, is it's really bad luck for Drake, where he accumulated all these means, and I just feel like nobody cares. I feel like it's like, dude, we're really happy for you. That's awesome. But I don't think that's why we ever loved you. I don't think that's why we love anybody. Because if that was the case, then we would all be like, yo, Jeff Bezos is the man. I don't know if people want to be Jeff Bezos. I think we're all like, yeah, he's really rich. Does anybody want to be Elon Musk? Can you let me know in the comments? We all acknowledge, like, yeah, man, like, you're going to Mars. That's crazy. Like, yo, bro, you're really rich. That's awesome. Do you want to hang out with Elon Musk? Do you want to hang out with Jeff Bezos? If you were like, who's the one person you want to hang out with? I don't think we're saying them. You guys just better not ask for no favors. Well, yeah, I don't think they are, bro. Like, this is 12 months ago this happened. They're not going to ask for favors now. It's dead and gone. Look, I don't want anybody to get hurt in this, but then it's like, we're talking about like death to a traitor. These people all were traitors on you. And then the guy who you took out, you have to remember, maybe you don't know this, Drake, another thing he talks about in 4 p.m. in Calabasas, right? They wanted him to take an R&B guy on the road, and he said no and drew for Kendrick and Rocky. It's a Drake lyric. He took Kendrick on the road. He put Kendrick off the back of early Kendrick mixtapes, and maybe after that first Kendrick record was out, the first album was out, he brought him on, was it Club Paradise? He brought Kendrick on the tour after Take Care. Huge look for Kendrick at the time. I think does the song with, is Kendrick on Effin' Problems? I think so, right? I think it's Rocky, Kendrick, 2 Chainz, and Drake, I think. So like the biggest traitor, like you're saying on this record, you're like, death to a traitor. And by the way, I'm going to say this throughout because I take it seriously. Like, I don't want anything to happen to anybody, but I'm saying like death to a traitor. Dude, the biggest traitor just ran your city twice without incident. And again, I don't want incident, bro. I'm just saying, I'm a big pro wrestling fan. In the world of pro wrestling, they like the good guy, the babyface. You're never supposed to be like, I'm going to kill you in the main event, because you're not going to do that. You shouldn't say anything you're not going to do. And so I just feel like this is a lot of like really like tough, aggressive talk. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, it sounds so cool when you say it. Drake sounds so cool when he talks like this. But it's like, we just saw Kendrick run Toronto twice. We just saw Luther like do a historic run at the top of the chart. It did not negatively affect. Like, let's reposition the idea of like death to a traitor to not mean death, but like repercussion. I haven't seen a repercussion for Kendrick Lamar going at Drake. Like, there were repercussions for Meek Mill. Like, he looked terrible in that whole thing. So he goes on to say, she might decide to say no to me now, but yes to me later. What does that mean? Yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of a weird line, dude. Her ass is all natty like Florida Gator. That's cool because they just won the national championship. You switched on the guys and supported a hater. What's the get back? It's TBD. I look at this stuff like a BTC. It's Bitcoin. Could be down this week. Then I'm up next week. Okay. Tells us nothing new. You've heard the chorus. The second verse, he says, guys get punched in the face on some TLC shit on the dead guys. Some TLC. Oh, I shouldn't say that word. Some TLC stuff because you're going to need a chili ice pack for your left eye. It's awesome wordplay. Drake's always been an awesome writer. I'm back in your city tonight, walking around with my head high. I saw bro went to pop out with them. Been D-writing gang since headlines. Is that about the politician? Is that what we're thinking about? Oh, no. This is about, Kendrick called it a pop out his concert, and this is probably about LeBron James. Wow, that's really funny. So that line's about LeBron James. So Drake, though, goes on to say, like he said there, right? Like, I'm back in your city tonight, walking around with my head high, but they're doing that in your city, bro. I don't want anybody to get hurt. What I'm saying, though, is like, they're doing that in your city. So it hurts. It hurts this whole story you're telling. It feels like nobody's there until you start giving out two tones. Is that a type of watch? Can you tell I'm broke? No. And nobody cares until they're in front of your tombstone. We've heard all of this, though. Drake, we've heard all this. Like, you're the hero. A hero doesn't retrace his steps. Like, he learns. That's why we love the hero, because the hero is aspirational. We are the people who should not be, who should have the fault, who should have the difficulty conquering things and moving past things in our lives. We look to the heroes to be better than us. But this is very redundant material. ICEMAN, Tiffany Bluestones, I done made plenty S stuff right out of two wrongs. Let's go. The last thing he says here is, what did I miss when I was looking at y'all and cooking with y'all and giving out verses and bookings to y'all? All true. Drake did all of that. But I just think they were using Drake. Making sure wires were hit. What did I miss? I'm sure Drake's a great guy, and I'm sure he was making sure people got paid. When you were at my crib looking at women, word for word at all my shows, you always felt like this. What did I miss? I think he didn't understand what the relationship was about. I think that's the tragedy of the Drake story. Is like, I really think it was transactional for most of those guys. Because people in your industry, they're like school friends. You remember school friends when you were growing up? Yeah, your friends at school, you don't hang out on the weekends. I think it was a lot like that, personally. All right, let me say what's up to the chat. What's up, Tracy? What's up, RT? What's up, Jeff? What's up, Kerwin? All right, checking in there. So those are the thoughts on Drake. What is it doing from a streaming perspective? I will tell you. I'll get this up on the screen. There we go. Okay, so now what did Drake do stream-wise? There we go. All right, so this is Hits Daily Double. Drake's surprise July 4th release has set off sparks. The OVO Republic single has shot to number one on both the Apple Music Top 100 and Spotify Daily US charts. I'm not trying to sound like a Drake hater. No one else dropped. It was a holiday. So I'm just saying, for context, for accuracy, I'm not being a hater whatsoever. Very slow week. Almost a non-existent week. It's also at the top of Spotify's Daily USA charts. Number 15 globally. The track racked up 4 million streams in its first day, is thought to be a postmortem on his deathless feud with Kendrick Lamar. And interesting, yeah, he does. He's going at his friends, not Kendrick. It's kind of interesting. I guess Kendrick could have been a pseudo friend.